66 million years ago, a 14-kilometer-wide asteroid slammed into Earth. We're talking about the force of billions of atomic bombs. It literally hit the reset button on life and wiped out the dinosaurs. But what if it hadn't? Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving into the ultimate what-if scenario. What if we lived on an alternate Earth where that massive mass extinction simply never happened? It's this incredible mystery that blends evolutionary biology with alternate history, and it absolutely forces us to rethink the fragility of our own existence.
I want you to really think about this for a second. Imagine looking outside your window right now, and instead of birds and squirrels, the descendants of the mighty T-Rex and Triceratops are still the apex species roaming the continents. Over the last 66 million years, they wouldn't have just frozen in time, right? They would have undergone millions of years of fierce evolutionary arms races, adapting to and conquering literally every ecological niche on the planet. Our landscapes, our food chains, our mega ecosystems, they would be completely unrecognizable, entirely shaped by an unbroken dynasty of reptilian overlords.
But, this thought experiment brings us face to face with an incredibly chilling question. Would humans even be here to see it? If those giant reptiles never vacated the top spots in the food chain, would our tiny, shrew-like mammalian ancestors have ever had the chance to evolve into us? For millions of years, early mammals were forced to hide in the shadows, just scurrying through the underbrush at night. Without that cataclysmic asteroid clearing the board, our entire evolutionary path might have been permanently blocked. No way around it.
And let's take that a step further. If humans didn't make it, could highly intelligent, tool-wielding dinosaurs have taken our place? Could they have built their own societies, local communities, or even complex civilizations? I know, it sounds exactly like the plot of a sci-fi novel. But evolutionary biologists and paleontologists have actually run the numbers on this. They've looked really closely at how intelligence evolves, and whether a non-mammalian species could actually develop the biological hardware necessary for technology and culture.
Now, the absolutely most fascinating aspect of this scenario is the exact point of divergence. We know the asteroid hit the shallow sea of the Yucatan Peninsula. That specific spot vaporized sulfur-rich rocks, sending 15 billion tons of soot into the atmosphere. That's what created an endless winter, dropping global temperatures by 28 degrees Celsius and essentially suffocating the biosphere. But if that asteroid had arrived just a few minutes earlier or later, the Earth's rotation would have placed a deep ocean right in its crosshairs. The deadly soot wouldn't have choked the sky, the sun would have kept shining, the dinosaurs would have survived, and mammals would have remained entirely suppressed. Just a few minutes changed everything.
So as we move through the timeline of the Cenozoic era, we have to remember something crucial. Dinosaurs were already incredibly resilient. They had already survived shifting continents and extreme climate fluctuations for over 160 million years. If they hit the Earth's later ice ages, they wouldn't have just frozen and died out. No way. They would have adapted brilliantly. Just like mammals evolved into woolly mammoths, we would have seen massive, thick-feathered theropods. Picture woolly raptors and fuzzy tyrannosaurs completely dominating the frozen steppes and tundras of a cooling planet. How wild is that?
So this crucial point in the intelligence debate really begins back in 1982 with a famous thought experiment by paleontology curator Dale A. Russell. He created this concept called the Dinosauroid. Russell noticed that a late Cretaceous theropod called Stenonychosaurus, which is a type of troodontid, had an unusually large brain-to-body ratio. It also had binocular vision and grasping hands. He theorized that, if given another 66 million years, its brain capacity could rival ours. This could lead to a highly intelligent, self-aware being fully capable of shaping its environment.
But this debate highlights a really fascinating divide in speculative biology. Russell imagined a very anthropomorphic, upright creature, basically tailless and walking exactly like a human. But modern paleontologists like Darren Naish heavily critique this. They argue it's just way too human-centric. They say an intelligent dinosaur would look much more like the Ava sapiens designed by artist C.M. Koseman. This creature keeps a horizontal theropod posture, uses a beak or snout to manipulate tools, and honestly looks like a brilliantly smart horse-sized ground bird. Because let's be real, nature doesn't necessarily prefer the human body shape for intelligence.
Without the extinction event, we'd get the radically bizarre ecosystems imagined in Dougal Dixon's famous book, The New Dinosaurs. He used real evolutionary principles to imagine these Cenozoic dinosaurs, and the concepts are terrifying. Take the gourmand, an apex scavenger descended from tyrannosaurs that lost its arms entirely, and instead stretches its jaws to swallow huge prey whole, like a giant nightmare-inducing snake. Or the cutlass tooth, a pack-hunting dromaeosaur that evolved massive saber teeth to take down thick-skinned herbivores. And then there's the lank, a massive flying reptile that adapted to grazing on all fours, like a weird featherless giraffe. It's just wild to think about. And building on that, there's a massive collaborative project known as SpecWorld that hypothesized even wilder ecological niches. Imagine going whale watching off the coast, right? But instead of seeing mammals cresting the waves, you see mochales. These are gigantic, semi-aquatic sauropods that evolved duck-like bills and incredibly dense bones to actually swim and conquer the oceans. Or you look to the skies and see massive Asdarchid pterosaurs with 15-meter wingspans soaring overhead, pushing the absolute maximum physical limits of biological flight to an awe-inspiring degree.
Now, I know what you're thinking. An armless T-Rex or whale dinosaur sounds like pure science fiction. But as paleontologist David Hone points out regarding the speculative paleoart book All Yesterdays, these concepts are actually no more extreme or unlikely than the bizarre adaptations we already see in living species today. Real evolutionary biology is exceptionally weird, and nature is constantly producing incredibly bizarre, hyper-specialized animals whenever a niche opens up. The dinosaurs for sure would have been absolutely no different.
Which brings us back to our ancestors. 160 million years. That is the massive number of years mammals coexisted alongside dinosaurs. Think about that span of geologic time. For that entire stretch, mammals were kept small, nocturnal, and utterly subordinate. They never conquered megafaunal niches simply because the dinosaurs were too deeply entrenched in those roles. We were literally prisoners in a world ruled by giants.
As Dr. Stephen Broussard beautifully and bluntly summarizes, without the asteroid hitting the reset button on the planet, mammals would likely have remained shadowy little creatures indefinitely. To quote him directly, "What's another 66 million years when it had already been like that for 160 million years already?" It really hits the nail on the head. If the asteroid misses, we almost certainly do not exist, period. But hey, let's play devil's advocate for a second and explore the dark side of this scenario. Let's say primates somehow did manage to evolve into human-like beings alongside dinosaurs. We would face a terrifying reality. Our ancestors evolved large brains by foraging for fruit in trees. But what if arboreal, climbing dinosaurs had already claimed those canopies? And if we descended to the savannas, our solitary, unarmed ancestors would be effortless prey for highly coordinated pack-hunting dromaeosaurs. We wouldn't be the apex predators, folks. We would be at the very bottom of the menu.
If we somehow managed to survive that brutal gauntlet and actually built modern cities, our urban environments would be drastically different. Instead of seagulls snatching your fries at the beach or raccoons raiding your trash cans at night, you'd have small, scrappy, omnivorous theropods lurking in the alleyways. Just picture tiny, feathered, beaked dinosaurs darting out of the bushes to nibble on the hydrangeas in your suburban garden. It's kind of whimsical, but also deeply, deeply alien. Humans, however, are incredibly adaptable. If we coexisted, we would have integrated them into our societies just like we did with modern mammals. We'd undoubtedly have domesticated certain sturdy dinosaurs for agricultural labor, farmed massive herds of them for meat and giant eggs, and maybe even kept smaller, colorful, feathered species in our homes as pets. But on the flip side, massive predators creeping too close to our livestock or cities, they'd be aggressively hunted by the military or local authorities as highly dangerous nuisance animals.
Tragically, though, history tells us exactly how we treat massive land animals. Just as we wiped out the woolly mammoth and severely threatened modern elephants and rhinos, human expansion and habitat destruction would likely lead to a human-driven megafauna extinction. Those colossal sauropods would require way too much food and space to peacefully coexist with sprawling human agriculture. The biggest, most majestic dinosaurs would likely be pushed to the brink, restricted to highly protected wildlife reserves. It would quite literally be a real-life Jurassic Park.
This entire thought experiment brings us to a really profound philosophical concept found in the Critique Journal on Alternative Histories, known as dialetheism. When we juxtapose our actual history with these counterfactual timelines, it serves a much higher purpose than just fun sci-fi world-building. It exposes the incredibly fragile and totally accidental nature of our own reality. It shows us that the sequence of events that led to human consciousness wasn't inevitable at all. It was incredibly precarious.
So I want to leave you with this final lingering thought to process as we wrap up today's explainer. Look around you at the human world we've built. Was the brutal, fiery extinction of the dinosaurs actually a cosmic necessity for humanity to even exist? Are we and absolutely everything we have ever achieved simply the result of a single rock from space happening to strike the absolute worst possible place on Earth at the exact right moment? Thank you for watching.